Hey there, welcome to Jeremy Davis Books. It has been a while, I know, but that is because I've been reading Anna Karenina, rereading it, really. It's a tome. So this is my thoughts on Anna Karenina on a second read in under 5 minutes. It's by Leo Tolstoy, one of the great Russian writers, and the translation I read was the Richard Pevere and Larissa Volokonsky translation. I love Volokonsky. I just love the name. It sounds like it belongs in the book. It was an interesting reread for me because when I first read it 20 years ago or so, I was so enamored of it. I loved it deeply. And this time around, it's not that I didn't love it, but I didn't love it as much as I remember loving it before. And I think that's due to a couple things. One of the things I remember loving so much that first read all those years ago was the philosophical aspect of the book. Tolstoy goes into a lot of thoughts on like how to live your life and what it means to live a good life. And so the exploration of that appealed to me then, and it still appeals to me now. The thing is, it doesn't really center fully around that until like the last 30 or 40 pages. I mean, the end of this book is this beautiful coalescing of thoughts and ideas that come into this realization for one of the main characters about what it takes to live a good, happy life. And that's just so fulfilling, especially at the end of like 850 or so pages. The thing that was a little more difficult for me this time around was dealing with all this stuff before that. It's a soap opera. It's about the richest of rich people and their rich people problems. And I know sometimes that's fun, and I know that's sort of the point. Tolstoy was part of the aristocracy, and so he was writing what he knew. He was also sort of poking fun at it and holding it up as an example of the silliness of it sometimes. But the thing is, like, every page is an eye roll. These people are so privileged and wealthy, and their problems are actually not problems. It can be so ludicrous. There is one plot point where a young woman is being wooed by a man and he ends up ghosting her, and she becomes so lovesick, so distraught from this rejection that she is physically sick, or at least her family thinks so. And the solution to that is that they go on an extended vacation to a spa town for the summer. It's as silly as it sounds. And when you're reading it, it's not quite so silly, but it is. And the book is full of that kind of stuff. And as I said, I know that that's sort of the point, that something like that gets in the way of happiness. I will say that the language of this book, or at least of this translation, is a bit mundane to me. I have found that I tend to like more lyrical language, things that are a little more on the poetic side. And this is not that. It's quite ordinary, actually. One of the other things I think I struggled with this time around is that a lot of the action of the book happens within the minds of the characters. It's written in omniscient perspective, and so Tolstoy goes in and out of a bunch of different characters' interior thoughts and emotions, and that's where a lot of the story comes from. But the thing is that if someone is feeling sad, it'll just say she felt sad, as opposed to her doing something or behaving in a certain way that shows that she's sad. In writing degrees, they call this like showing versus telling. Telling is saying she was sad. Showing is showing her behaving in a certain way that illustrates that she's sad. And I found that I really do prefer to discover or figure out how a character is feeling or thinking on my own. It's a lot more satisfying. And so when the author continually just tells you how people are feeling or thinking, after a while it just starts to feel a little less satisfying. And what the overall experience of reading it feels like is sort of like you're skimming on top of a wave, as opposed to submerging in the ocean and swimming through it, which to me is much more satisfying. So that's what it feels like. You just feel like you're skimming the surface of the story. And even though it's 800 pages or so, it starts to feel like you're missing a lot of stuff. All the stuff that's underneath the surface, all the deeper waters of the narrative. And I just found that I wanted that. One of the other differences in my experience reading it this time, as I did long ago, was in how I felt about Anna. I remember just really looking down on her the first time I read this, thinking, why is she so unhappy? She has all of this opportunity for happiness. She's just like turning her back on it at every stage. She's always making a choice that is so clearly going to make her unhappy when she has other options. And so I was frustrated with her back then. And now I'm not so much. maybe because I know a little bit more about what choices were actually available to women in that time and place. But I see more now how every choice she has really isn't very good. And so I have a lot more sympathy for Anna Karenina this time around. And I certainly do feel terrible about what ends up happening to her, spoiler alert. But I think most people know what happens to her. I hope you do. If you don't, I'm very sorry for giving you a little bit of a spoiler. Because you should read this book. It's a classic, and I understand why it's a classic. It stood the test of time because it does talk about these sort of like universal concepts about being happy and what happiness is, and it's just really, it's worth reading. So yeah, if you have a spare couple of weeks, if you want to zip through it, or if you have a spare month, I'm going to say that you should read it. It's a classic, it's meaningful, it has value in our literary canon, so read it. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Anna Karenina, on my second read. I have already started my second read of To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf. That is one of my absolute favorite books, and I already know that my experience reading it this time around is going to fairly closely mirror my first time, because I'm loving it as much as I did before. So I should have a video up about that pretty soon. Thanks so much for watching, and I will talk to you later.